Welcome everyone to the Black Lawyers Podcast. Super excited for this episode. We are interviewing B. Justin Reese from Bravo 7 Charm. He does a lot, personal injuries. I think he's going to get back and being a sports agent now that COVID is over. He's got a lot going on. I've became friends with him over a year and a half ago, kind of in the middle of the pandemic and a lot of the police justice reform things that were going on. Was happy to have him on with my other organization, Warrior Bay, talking about some of those things with the election. So super excited to have him back. Justin, welcome.
Hey, appreciate you having me.
Yes. Well, it's all Black everything. Sometimes we say diversity. So diversity means a lot of things. All Black, Black. Black lawyers, Black advocates, Black politicians. This is all about, uplifting our people, highlighting our people, and talking about our issues. So thank you for coming on. So let's get started. Jump right into it.
Let's jump into it.
Some Black news hot topics. So let's start off with our brother Bill Cosby. I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole of whether he's guilty or not, but kind of the latest is that some about criminal law, about how when you go through the probation process, if you serve a certain amount of years. So he served almost for 3 years, his minimum sentence, that he could really not even worry about his appeal. He could literally be let out. But the board recently said that there's still some things he needs to do. And this man is almost 90 years old. I think he's teaching classes up in the, he's doing everything up. He's trying to live a normal life in jail. People life, of course. So they're like, oh, well, he has to take they say he didn't take a sex offender class. And because he's still claiming his innocence, right? He's still in the middle of the appeal. Yes. If you're saying you're innocent, why am I taking a sex offender class? So I get his rationale.
There's a lot that happens with these parole boards because what they want you to do is, and it really puts people between a rock and a hard place, because in order to get out of jail or to get released on parole, they want you to literally, more often than not, admit guilt. Because in their minds, that is their way of showing that you are remorseful, regardless of whether you are truly innocent or not. We know that there are many occasions where you have people who are innocent who have been convicted, but in order to get out on parole, you have to say that you committed this crime, or that you're remorseful and you're sorry. That's a big part of the process. And here it is. You have people who are like, no, I didn't do this. I served my time, let me out. And that is not granted to them. And then this might just be one of those situations where they're saying, well, no, in order for you to get out, you got to take the sex offenders class. And then when you come in front of us, you have to admit that you're sorry for what you did and that you did it. That's the only way we're going to let you out. And that happens quite often, unfortunately.
Right. So, he's obviously not being held to any different standard. They want him to, whether he still thinks he's, guilty or not, they don't care about that. They want him to do what it takes to confirm, at least in their eyes, that he's remorseful. So I guess that is my question to you. If you were in his shoes and you knew, okay, I have to take this class, they're probably gonna let me go. If you really felt like you were innocent, would you just go ahead and take the class so you could get out because your choice to end your life, or would you hold on to your innocence and not take the class?
That's always a tough one. And the reason why is one of the factors is Bill Cosby's age. He's at I'm not sure how old he is, but he's in his 70s. Yeah.
He's in his 80s.
Yeah, he's in his 80s. And it's one of those things like, he has a legacy because I get his principle. He's maintaining his innocence. He's maintaining his innocence. He was wrongly convicted. And by doing this, it's signifying that he truly is guilty. But then again, on the flip side, it's like, you're getting close to your latter years, man. You're on borrowed time.
Or your last leg of life.
Really, we're all on borrowed time the minute we come into this world. But like your time is left more or less than others. And so, me personally, that's a really tough position to be in, but I would not want to not have my last days inside of a
My
prison.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah, not with
You
my
know,
family.
I think as long as, and at this point, I mean, look, unfortunately, you've been convicted. People are going to think what they want to think at the end of the day. But as long as you can hold your head up in front of your family and the people who truly love you, I don't think you have anything to be ashamed of. You know, at this point, I mean, enough of the damage I think has been done. Again, it's hard for me to really say what I would do in his position, but just thinking about if I'm in my 80s, I don't want to die in this place. You know, I would want to be out. I would want to be with my family, the people who truly love me, and be around me. You know,
Right.
I might not be able to repair my reputation, but at that point, I think personally, I would play the little song and dance and just come out.
Right. Right. You want me to say fine, you know? Right. So, and I think I'm with you. I think I share that sentiment. Speaking of admitting to guilt, switching gears, sort of. So the latest in the T.I. Tiny debacle, for our listeners that don't know that, first of all, they have not been charged with anything, let alone convicted with anything. There have been no civil complaints filed. You know, with all this talk, I'm like, nothing has been filed in a court of law, which also tells me maybe not all of it is true. I'm not saying some of it may not be true, but to me, if all of this stuff is true, maybe you can't control when the prosecutor is going to do charges, but on the civil side, just file your complaint.
Yeah.
File your complaint. Get this show on the road. Why? No, because you know that it's easier just to settle with them out of court and not have to do
Absolutely.
all that.
And also, too, I mean, some of the legal strategy is to literally try to piggyback off of any criminal charges,
Right.
because you can let them do all the heavy lifting. You know, you can let them get a lot of the evidence for you, and then you just kind of, like in the racing world, you could just draft right behind their car.
Okay, I didn't think about it that way. That maybe they're also just waiting for the criminal charges, so it would really give more meat to their civil complaint. Okay, that's a good point. I never thought about that.
Exactly.
See, this is why you on the podcast. Didn't think about that. I didn't think about that. Okay, because I was wondering. I was like, but okay, yeah. Even from a strategic standpoint, that if I was representing one of these ladies, and speaking of which, so Justin and I did a Clubhouse, and this was one of the hot topics when it first kind of came out. And one of the young ladies, Sabrina, who is part of this hot topic today, she actually just said, "I don't want anything. I just want you to apologize to me." She actually was on our Clubhouse. She came on our Clubhouse. She was listening to everything we said. Ooh. You know, she's gonna have us disbarred, in our opinion. But I remember that. I was like, okay, sis, like, we're actually pro plaintiff, so you know, for the most part. So you ain't have to worry. But anyway, with all that being said, she is actually a part of today's hot topics because that is the latest development, that she just wants an apology, and she has given T.I. and Tiny 7 days. To issue her apology. I think we may be on day 4 or 5. So we got 2 more days, I guess.
There we go.
And then maybe she's gonna go ahead and move forward with what she's gonna do. So that is my question to you. What and I know you're like, you're not these people, but if you were T.I. and Tiny, would you just go ahead and just apologize? You know, like say some sort of apology. Maybe there was a misunderstanding because, again, drugs, alcohol involved. Maybe they thought it was consensual. You know, maybe really they thought. Right. Maybe they come up with some sort of apology where it's like, well, if you didn't, you know, we weren't under that impression, but we just want to apologize because we want to close this out. We want to let you know and the world know that we respect women. We would never do anything against someone. You know, do you think they should come up? You know, if you were there, and even maybe if you're not there, let's just say you are their lawyer, would you recommend them apologizing, or do you think that would open up the floodgates if they apologize?
Well, I think it all depends on how you're negotiating this apology. If she has retained counsel, you know, obviously you would have to work everything out with her attorney and ask her what it is that she truly wants, right? And then structure some type of agreement around that. So if she's truly saying, "Hey, I want an apology," well, what does that really look like? Because there's so many different ways you can apologize. Are you trying to have us like literally just say every single hyper specific detail that came out and explain the whole process in our apology? or
Right,
you
or
want
just a
do you want a
general.
general apology?
Okay,
What is
okay,
it that you're saying?
okay.
And also too, you know, is this apology really gonna be, in lieu of any type of settlement? So it's kind of like, are you now waiving any further rights to bring this to trial because we're now coming to an agreement that, hey, this is going to satisfy any and all settlement agreements with respect to anything that arose from this transaction or
I
occurrence?
see.
You
I
see what I'm
see.
saying? So
Yeah.
you have to really start
You're gonna
asking
have to
yourself,
cross all your T's and
you
dot your
got to
I's
you
before you do that
because the thing
apology.
is, if you
Okay.
apologize on some level, you're admitting guilt if you
I know.
apologize on some
That's
level. On some level. So you don't want that apology to backfire on you
right.
to where it's like you apologize and then she's like, got you, and then goes file. And I'm not saying she would do this, but
Right, right.
let's just say in the general sense, if someone would ask for an apology, you apologize, it's not agreed upon in a settlement agreement or some type of agreement, and then they go behind and file suit because you have already right there just incriminated yourself
Right.
publicly. So
Yeah.
I think a lot would, if that's the case, a lot would need to be structured, and also specifically like, again, what type of apology is this going to be, and on what platform is this going to be on? So
Right.
yeah, that's my thoughts on that one.
Like don't be too quick to apologize, huh?
You,
And then
you
get
can't
yourself
come in and
caught
say,
up
hey,
there.
I'm sorry for giving you drugs that night, and we took advantage of you. Like, is that the apology you want? I don't know. Clearly, we don't know what happened because
That's the
nobody.
thing.
We
That's why
only the
I
only
think
people that were there were there. I'm not saying what I just said. I'm not saying that happened. But
right.
what kind of apology do you want? So I think that would need to be ironed out as well.
Okay. And I think that's fair. And I think that's the answer I would also come up with, that if I was their attorney, like, okay, even if you guys are going to do this, you don't want it to, make it so that now she's like, see, got the proof, but go file it. Or maybe somebody else uses that as a way to say, see, this also happened to be, like,
Exactly.
it could be a rabbit hole depending on
It could be.
what
It could
you're
be.
doing.
Because also too, the other side of it is, if you're talking about specifics, if they get into that, now you're showing a pattern. And if there was other people that were involved, they could then come out and say, well, that's exactly what they did to me. And now you create this whole chain reaction of now other things you have to deal with, if that is the case. Clearly
Right.
we don't know if I don't know if there's other people or not, whatever
Right.
the case may be. But as we have seen, whenever there's one domino,
Right.
all of a sudden you get like a whole chain of them that just start falling and people just start coming out the woodworks. So,
I agree.
yeah.
I agree. So I'm with you. I think that would be my same legal recommendation.
Yeah.
So anyway, so those are hot topics. Thanks for playing with us. Like I said, it's all, what do you learn in law school? The answer is it depends. That's the first thing you learn in law school when answering a legal question. It just all depends,
Absolutely.
With that being said, I wanted to jump into more about you becoming a Black attorney. This podcast is dedicated to the 5%. We're 5%. Obviously, we're trying to grow that percentage of Black U.S. legal professionals, licensed attorneys. It's still just a crazy number to me. Maybe because I'm from D.C. and there were so many like law schools and Black people walking around, like so many Black lawyers, and it's like, no, not really. When you add it all up across the United States, who's licensed and all that, it's not. It's not that many of us. So, I'm sure I wear it proudly. I'm sure you wear it proudly. So I just want to jump into more about why you became Black attorney. So, so that is my first question. Like, why did you choose this profession? Did you choose this profession, or did this profession choose you?
That's always I always have a funny answer to that question, because for so long I actually was like fighting the entire idea of becoming an attorney. My father has been an attorney for several years prior to him becoming a judge, and my father's a very well-respected legal professional here in New Orleans. And it was very intimidating because I always felt like I would have to fill the big shoes that he had made for himself as an attorney, and then as a judge. And I was like, there's no way in the world that I can ever do that. I would be in his shadow. And so, just like many kids, I went into undergrad trying to be a doctor. Everybody wants to be a doctor. when they go to undergrad until you get
They
into
didn't take that first chemistry 101 class. And like, no.
until you take that first chemistry class. One of my favorite, and I equate this to one of my favorite lines by Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan in boxing until you get punched in the mouth one time, and then it just goes out the window. And that chemistry punched me in the mouth, something serious.
Yeah, and so did half of my dorm. Next semester, none of those people were pre-med anymore.
Chemistry was my Mike Tyson, and I got knocked out. And so I was always a psych major, and I was a psych pre-med. So I dropped the pre-med and had to begin to figure out, what's next for me, because I don't think there's really too much you can do with a psychology degree, outside of continuing your education. Or being an entrepreneur, just going in a completely different field, starting a business. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking about, okay, am I going to go to grad school? I thought about being a clinical psychologist. Am I going to go to grad school, write a 400-page thesis, defend it, write a book, and
what am I going to do with this? This is the 5-year, 10-year plan for this,
right? Or do I go to law school, write a 30-page paper, and become a lawyer? And I was like, you know what? I've got a lot of lawyers in my family, and I used to always say that 30-page paper sounds a lot better than that 400-page book. But really, though, and I'm gonna be serious here, my father is an amazing person. He used to sit me down and reassure me all the time. He never put the extra pressure on me. He said, "Son, you have more of an ally than someone just hanging over you. Having a big shadow standing over you."
Because even statistically, I didn't know your dad was a lawyer. Statistically, the fact that your father is a lawyer, like, I'm sure that's like less than, less than 2%, 1%.
It became even worse because he became a judge before I got to law school. So, and he has handled some of the more monstrous cases around the city that were high profile. And both sides love my dad because he is a true legal scholar. Plaintiff lawyers, defense lawyers. The one thing they say is my father's always prepared. He reads everything. And so, and he's going
you ain't getting that over his head.
Nothing from either side. And they love him. They all love him for it. And so, he used to always just reassure me. He's like, "Son, you always got to be your own man. Yes, you're my son, but you're not my clone. You don't have to feel like you're fulfilling a legacy, but just adding to one." You know what I'm saying?
Right. And still take your own path.
Absolutely. And so that made me more confident in trying to go to law school, go down the law school route and become an attorney. Because I felt like he was taking a lot of the pressure off, which really helped me out a lot. Because at the end of the day, I've always had a fascination with law. I just didn't want to admit it.
Right, because you were like, I'm going to do something else. So
right. Yeah. And so once I did that, I just jumped headfirst into law school and just started going through it and really started enjoying some of the law school process.
Right, some of it. Well, that leads to my next question. What was your favorite law school class?
Ooh, I would say my favorite class would have been evidence. Because evidence is something that you can literally use and apply every day, especially what's going on in society, in our community, what's been happening. If you understand the rules of evidence, you understand the rules of Terry stops, unreasonable searches and seizures, you understand these laws, they will take you forward. Now, I'm not sitting here saying like get into it with the police, but
all right, but it does give you some base knowledge of what they can do and what they can't do.
They can do and what they can't do. And if you understand how things work, you can respectfully disagree if you're getting pulled over by police. Obviously, making sure that their body cameras are turned on. Explain your position. If you're having issues, you can demand that they call their sergeant to come down. And everybody can have a conversation, and understanding these things will help you so much. And that's why I was like, that's one of the few classes that you could really apply to like your everyday life. And so that was
in hindsight, this was probably before Trayvon Martin and some other things. And here's the thing. With Trayvon Martin, we had more cell phones, social media, that was kind of the age where it wasn't so much that it wasn't happening before. It just wasn't being documented and really pushed out there. But yeah, I got bad with the police because I knew the rules. I think I was getting ready to finish law school. I was like, yeah, we ain't gonna do this. Let's just call your chief of police down and let's
Yeah.
talk. Let's talk. And actually, I didn't even ask for the chief. I think I just asked for a supervisor or something.
Yeah.
The chief of police actually came down.
Yeah.
And I talked to him. So, I don't know if I would be doing all that now, but I was bold. I was bold back in the day. And it was in New Jersey. I was in law school in New York. And I told him, you don't have to ever worry about me coming back to New Jersey. And do you know I have not been back to New Jersey since then? I was like, I had something against the state after that bad experience. So anyway, yes.
And then the other side of it, if you're a trial attorney, I mean, that is crucial. Knowing the rules of evidence, that can be a game changer, during your trial. Literally can make or break your case.
You know, right. And it still don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you know your rules of evidence, I mean, that's, like I said, that's game change.
Well, speaking of, like you said, not being too bold and, the things that are just happening with discrimination amongst just public citizens, obviously, with what's happening. Have you ever, as a student or maybe even now as an attorney, felt like you were being discriminated against, maybe at school or even practicing, where you felt like you had a moment where it's like, they would be doing this to me if I was Black?
You know what? I felt like I did have a moment, and I really haven't shared this story publicly, but I'm gonna go ahead and share it today.
I get the exclusive. Okay.
You get the exclusive on this one.
Okay.
I felt like this was really sketchy. I don't want to just outright call it discriminatory, but it felt really sketchy to me. I was getting ready to write and this is my fault. I waited to my last semester to write my writing requirement, and it's a 30-page paper, and it was on international law. I was trying to get like what they call one of those international minors, and it was my last credit. You needed 10 credits. This 30-page paper was going to be my 10th credit to get my international law certificate. And part of it was we went on this European court tour, for like the Christmas holidays. It was like a 10-day trip during Christmas holidays to the different international courts in the EU. And I came back and I wrote my paper. And the first thing I just writing papers, and I never had an issue writing papers, but one of the first things they taught us in law school is that you really don't have any original thought when it comes to writing a legal paper. None, unless, everything is going to be based on past case law. A lot of your original thoughts, are going to be, maybe the factual scenarios of what happened, but your arguments, everything is going to be based on some type of law that is already in favor of your position. And so I wrote this paper, I turned it in on a Monday, and I'm set to graduate on Saturday. All right. I get a call. Cutting it close. I thought everything was great. I did everything I was asked of. Got all my citations, everything that you needed me to do. I did it. I get a call from the dean's office saying that they want to speak to me. I go talk to the professor who I turned my paper into, and he tells me that I plagiarized, but I didn't plagiarize. Those were his exact words.
Which one is it, sir?
I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, am I halfway pregnant? Like, I'm confused.
Right. It's either you have an R or you not. Right.
I'm confused.
Not a lot of in between when it comes.
I'm confused. I'm confused here. Like he said, he literally told me, "You plagiarized, but you didn't." And I'm like,
okay. So
and he said, I went and told the dean, and the dean said to fail you.
Wow.
I was like, he was like, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, thank you, Massa. Thank you.
Right, because I didn't plagiarize anyway, but okay.
And so he says, well, you got to rewrite your paper. And I think, and I'm set to graduate on Saturday.
You got to sit up there and rewrite a paper.
Rewrite a whole 30-page paper and do research and rewrite them, edit and rewrite and edit.
And hope that he doesn't think that this one's plagiarized too. Because
exactly. So I go talk to, this is now Tuesday. I go talk to the dean. And he was like, well, yeah, I mean, the dean just agreed with the professor. You got to rewrite your paper. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then he gives me a whole new topic on psychology law and tells me to pick a topic. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I literally spent that afternoon, by this time it's like 3:00 in the afternoon, from 3:00, researching, reading everything, highlighting all the case law that I can come up with from my research. So probably like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Go home, wake up at 6, and I'm just typing away, Wednesday. And I'm like typing away till like 3:00 in the morning again, 4:00 in the morning. Go home, repeat the process. It's Thursday. I finish my paper at 4:00 in the morning on, let's call it Friday. It's Friday morning now, right? I sleep in the library. I just scavenged all of the bean bags in the library. I was at a cubicle. I built a fort like around me, like just typing away.
Right.
I literally sleep in the library. I wake up at 6 in the morning. I edit the paper as best as I could. And throughout this process, I'm not gonna lie, I hadn't taken a shower. I ain't brushed my
Right.
teeth.
I just have to hunker down and just
I just hunkered down and I finished it. And I remember it was the dean's office opened at 9:00 in the morning. I took the paper over there. I edited as best as I could. I took it over there, and I know the viewers can't see me, but the dean was in his office. I was in the dean's suite standing by the receptionist. He was there. I literally took my paper and I just kind of just flung it on the desk and I walked out. I was so pissed.
Like drop the mic, like a drop the mic situation.
Yes, I just literally like just no. I kind of like I gave it a little frisbee.
Also, a fling a little bit.
I gave it a frisbee toss. Gave it a frisbee toss. I was pissed that whole week. I was pissed, and I'm not gonna lie. Like we had like a little reception that afternoon. I was so tired, exhausted. We had a reception. Obviously, my dad being who he is, I went to the same law school as my dad. He's a big alum there.
What is your law school? I meant to ask you.
Loyola, New Orleans.
Loyola.
Yeah. And so I remember the dean, my dad told me he had a talk with the dean. It was no secret. I told my parents what happened because in case I didn't graduate, I had to let them know.
I need you to know what's happening.
We had plans. We was having a graduation party. I'm like, look, we might have to cancel this stuff. So like, I had to put them on notice.
Right.
You know, and that's one other thing. Man, I could tell my parents anything, man. They, my parents are very supportive. So I tell my dad, and my dad knew the dean. The dean was like, I don't know. I guess the dean said something to the effect that, it was kind of put between a rock and a hard place. You got your son, I got my professor, this stuff. I hate that he had to rewrite the paper. And then he tried to crack a joke and said that I smelled like absolute shit, which is the truth because I hadn't taken a shower in like 4 days.
You had hunkered down.
Or brushed my teeth. So I was like, and I didn't care. I just had to finish that thing because I was getting ready, like 7 days after graduation, I was set to start my LLM program at Temple. So like if I didn't graduate, I wasn't going to be able to
it was just going to be like this domino effect.
The domino effect would have been catastrophic for me because I turned down a job with Dade County State Attorney's Office to be a prosecutor in Miami, to do my master's program at Temple Law, which was set to start 7 days after my law school graduation. And if I didn't pass and do this writing requirement, they would have had to withdraw from that. So I would have just been stuck out.
So that the long and the short of it is, I'm assuming you couldn't find any reason to say it was plagiarized. So you graduated. You're here.
I did graduate.
But that is a horror story, though.
It's a horror story, and I'm still one credit shy from my international law minor. I didn't even, because it was a whole different topic. They didn't count it. They didn't count it towards my minor. So like I'm still one credit shy.
Because of that situation. And you still feel like if you had maybe been a white student, it may have played out maybe a little bit.
I really do.
You really do?
I really do.
Well, switching gears, what is your best moment in law school? Because that certainly is worse, like right before graduation. What was your best moment in law school?
My best moment is when I won the national championship in mock trial. That was my best and shining moment. I mean, I have never won. I mean, I've always like competed in different things and have had success, but to win something on that level against some of the top law schools in the country, and even going against, I wound up going to Temple, and that's how I wound up going to Temple, because I didn't even realize they had the #1 mock trial in trial advocacy program in the country. And we went against Temple in the finals. It literally felt like little giants, going against the Cowboys for some of those.
Yeah, no, that
who understand that
rivalry.
movie, that movie reference. That's one of my favorite childhood movies, The Little Giants.
Yeah.
And we literally were like the Little Giants. We had not had a national team, and it was myself, 3 other classmates, and I mean, we busted our ass and prepared for that competition, and we got up there. And I mean, we just started cleaning house, and that was definitely one of my more shining moments. We got the big trophy. Our names are forever on the wall in the law school, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So that was really fun, and that tournament was in Chicago, and so it literally felt like one of those like underdog, like feel good movies that you would watch. That was that feeling. Yeah.
Speaking of achieving, so we're actually just shy of, maybe about 2 months before people take the dreaded bar exam. We had COVID that put people back, kind of like, still taking the exams, but, taking it remotely and things of that nature. You have any quick advice for people that are trying to just be one and done and just pass the daggone test? Do you recall anything that maybe you did that you felt like maybe gave you advantage or something that was helpful?
So a couple things. One, for those that who are getting ready to take the bar, if you were taking it in Louisiana, I feel for you that you did not qualify to take the bar last year, because you didn't have to take it. They passed everybody.
Really?
Yes.
That is new information. Okay.
Yes. Everybody in the state of Louisiana who signed up for the July test automatically passed. They just required you to do extra CLE hours
or something like that. Yeah, I think DC has it where you pass as well, but I think they're saying you actually have to work for a licensed attorney for a certain amount of years or some sort of supervision for.
Yeah.
They kind of gave some sort of requirement, but yeah, they allowed you to become a part.
Yes. So, but I will say this though, I was actually one who struggled with the bar exam and didn't realize I had some of the issues that I had until I got to the bar.
You take the exam, and it has nothing. I always tell people it has nothing to do with your intelligence or how well you did in law school. It's about really learning the exam. And some people ask, well, why are only 5% Black lawyers? Because a lot of our attorneys, okay, maybe you get in law school, but a lot of them are not passing the bar. So as much as you went to school, if you don't pass the bar, you can't practice. You can do other things, but you can't practice. So that's another reason why our percentage is so low. You have, organizations like mine and some others that are really trying to help, minorities, women, but especially Black folks get across the finish line.
So I'll say this, couple things. One, I did not realize I had some of the issues that I had. I didn't realize I had test anxiety in the way that I had it. It's so weird. I'm able to go in front of a bunch of people, talk and perform and do trials,
be on TV,
be on a stage, while I was in college and do stage plays and productions and all these different things. But my pen in the hand next to a piece of paper under a time limit, it was like I'm literally fighting Mike Tyson. It's like the scariest thing, And so one of the things that if you think you have an issue, don't be too proud to explore what that may be. Don't be too proud. If you think you have an issue with test anxiety, go see about that, because what happened with me, I had a big issue passing the bar. And it wasn't until I was able to be in a room by myself, and given a little bit of extra time, to kind of like just collect myself, I would still be having issues. And I tell folks, I said, look, and I know sometimes, especially in the Black community, past generations, and it's even been taught down, like, we don't go to psychologists.
Right. We don't ask for that sort of we don't
ask for that kind of help. We're just supposed to go to our pastor. And get help.
Right.
No. Don't be too proud to get help if you need it, because that was my saving grace, literally. And when you pass, you don't even have you don't have to go back and look at your exam. But I really wanted to see the difference, because the times that I didn't pass, I would go look at my exam, and I'm thinking to myself afterwards, I'm like, wait a minute, I I don't even remember writing that. Like, I'm like, wait, what? Like, mine just all over the place.
Right.
And then when I passed, I went to go look at the exam, even though I didn't have to, and I was
Right.
like, it was literally like a night and day, answer sheet. And so I want to share to all those out there, two things. One, if you think you have an issue,
Get the help. Right.
get the help that you need. And then the second part of it is you got to understand what the test is. Because knowing the information more often than not, because even in my situation, I was in study groups and I was teaching everybody everything.
Right. It's not like you didn't know the info.
And I knew it wasn't a situation of me not knowing the information because they went on and passed. So I'm not teaching bad information. It was my personal internal issue. So a lot of people out there, everybody who's out there studying, I'm pretty sure that I'm confident that you guys are going to know the information. But what you need to understand is how to take the test.
Take the test. So know your weaknesses and also just learn to take the test. And
learn how to take the test.
And I tell people, listen, I used a tutor. I didn't do the big class. For New York, I did like a group setting, which didn't work well for me. DC, I used an individual tutor. So yeah, like I think those are great tips. Now, you are a mostly personal injury attorney. I know.
Right.
What would you say is the best tip if someone is getting into your actual field in terms of how to excel as a personal injury attorney?
Couple things. One, I would get with someone who you want to get with someone who actually is a trial lawyer, because in our world, it's not often that we go to trial, but when we do, you gotta be ready because a lot of stuff resolves itself, and that's cool. We settle a lot of stuff, and that's really good. But if you really want to take things to the next level, you need to have a mentor who's a very good trial lawyer who'll be willing to bring you in on trials, help them out where you could sit second chair, start learning how to be a trial lawyer. And then also too, being in a position of understanding and making sure that you're with a firm that has a good marketing strategy,
Because there's so many attorneys.
There's so many,
like you're competing. So
there's so many attorneys. And I mean, look, personal injury, literally, I mean, you might get that case that's like, and obviously it's going to take a lot of skill to work it, but that could be that big one for you. And all it takes is one. And so, you want to be in the right position with the right people. So make sure you're getting with someone who you believe is a very reputable attorney, someone that could be your mentor, that it has a position that will have a position for you to come in and work in and learn under, and then also that's open to different marketing strategies because it's always changing. The attorneys, the older generation attorneys, I mean, their fire, their sword was always TV commercials, some radio, and that's great, and that's still effective. But we are now evolving. Social media is huge now.
It's changed.
And there are quite a few of those older attorneys who have like these multi-million-dollar budgets, but don't have as strong as a social media presence, as some of these other attorneys out here. And that's where a lot of the marketing is going these days. I mean, I've been getting a lot more of my cases through social media and just constantly trying to put out content. And I think and it's free. Well, for the most part, it's free.
Right. If you're not promoting it,
you're not promoting it,
but if you putting it on your page,
but if you've organically developed a large following, then
they're going to follow your posts anyway.
They're going to follow it anyway. That's free advertising. So make sure you're also with someone that's progressive and wants to grow with the times too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Speaking of growing, so last kind of lawyer question in terms of just like the profession. How do you see us growing the legal profession? I mean, getting past this. I mean, we've been at this, I think for the last 20 years, we've kind of been at this 4 to 5%, which is crazy that we haven't gone. I know a lot of it, speaking of social media, I do think you have a lot of young lawyers that are really pushing to get lawyers barred and people just into law school, period. Because I mean, that's a challenge within itself. So do you have any thoughts on like how we can get this number up?
I've actually been thinking about that because I think what we're looking at now, especially with the Generation Z?
Is that we're up to Z now.
that mid 20, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those folks are more so entrepreneurs than they are, wanting to do school and grad school.
Yeah,
And
that's the
so,
issue.
because
Yeah.
they're seeing how much money they can make putting out content on various different topics, whether it's travel and food and fashion
Right.
and e-commerce and all
So
of
it's
these
almost
different.
like we have to make being a lawyer like exciting again and appealing
Exactly,
again. Okay.
exactly,
Okay. That's a
exactly.
good point. Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, everybody I feel like in this Gen Z generation are literally, they just like, I feel like the attitude is, I just want to do my own thing.
Right. And I don't want to have to go to
Literally.
school and spend
And
all
I'm
this
not,
money.
and look, I don't want to make it sound like I'm hating on that, because I think entrepreneurship is actually amazing. I wish I would have understood more about it and really, because I mean, it wasn't that I was a stranger to it, but it was never like the big topic. The big topics for me growing up is, you go to school, you get good grades, you go be a lawyer, you go be a doctor, you go be a
Right.
banker,
Right. You
you
be one
work
of these
hard,
professions, you get
they
your money.
save your
Right.
money, and then you retire,
Right.
but you retire
Network.
really good with like
Right.
with this nice
The
profession and
stability.
this
Right.
nice title,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now these Generation Zers, they understand like doing their own thing in entrepreneurship and creating money off of their cell phones and making money online, and whether they're having like I said, their e-commerce stores and
Right.
doing different things through stocks and trading. I mean, they're
Right.
literally, so that part, I've been thinking about it. It's like, I really don't know the answer to that question, because they're all locked into that.
Yeah, I think it's almost like tying what's exciting about that to law, because you can actually go to law school and become an entrepreneur. You can have your own
Yeah,
law firm, you can have your own business, or you can take your legal degree and let that be the edge in your business because you
yeah,
understand contracts. So maybe just taking some of the things that attract them to these other things and somehow tying it into like, oh, if you went to law school, you could always also do this. Like I said,
yeah,
it's really about, I think, making it more appealing and figuring out ways to kind of like get to that particular group, and maybe even the little group before that, the people that are in high school, maybe 17, 18, because they're getting ready to be that next group.
yeah.
So I agree. So I wanted to just close out with your thoughts on just a few, just like really quickly. We got our Black, very, very high profile cases that are kind of pending, that in the next couple of
Mm.
months we'll see some results. Obviously, praise God, we got the guilty, all three guilty verdicts.
Yes, yes. I was
With
locked
with
into
I was
that
like
trial.
I was screaming in my house for the Derek Chauvin trial with George Floyd, and I think it just set a, whether he's not necessarily a legal precedent in each state, because each state has its own rules, but it just precedent in general, like we're not playing around. Like
Hmm.
when you go this far outside of the scope of what is reasonable, what an officer should be doing in the scope of his employment, when you go that far outside of it, and it's on tape, and even if one on tape, it's on tape, you got
Yeah.
witnesses, you got experts, like we are not going to let you get away with like murdering someone on camera. So there's that. But we still have, some ways to go. In particular, two cases. One, I represent all the IP and stuff for the Ahmaud Arbery estate. I was hired a few months ago because people just raising money in his name, and it's just a mess.
Yeah.
So I do more of that, obviously not the civil criminal side, but more the IP side of his brand. But what are your thoughts on, the fact that they're going to charge them both with a hate crime and a state? It's going to be two different trials. Do you think what happened with the Derek Chauvin verdict and the George Floyd, will it maybe have some influence maybe on the jurors in these other cases?
Well, let's say, I mean, obviously, when you go to trial and you're a jury, you're supposed to come in unbiased, as they say, and you got to be impartial. But I think just as human beings, we're naturally going to have some bias, even though you say you can be impartial.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's just what it is. I think the George Floyd trial definitely set a precedent as to no one is above the law.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can be taken down, even police officers who are not doing the jobs in the way that they swore to do their jobs,
Right.
and which is to protect and serve the community.
Right. I agree.
And then you have here with Ahmaud Arbery, there were vigilantes
Mm-hmm.
who were acting as if they were law enforcement. and it's like, who are you to decide that you are going to be the neighborhood sheriff? No one gave you
Well,
that right.
it was it brought me back to Trayvon Martin.
Yes.
Zimmerman was
Yeah.
not a police officer. He stood on, their version of the citizens arrest law, which is obviously that stand your ground is a version of citizens arrest.
Right.
And so much so that in Georgia is now the first state to get rid of citizen
Well,
arrest.
they need to.
There's some
They
small
need to.
exceptions, but generally speaking, there is no more citizen arrest. You can't just be like a cowboy and go think you can go.
You can't do that, because the problem with that is people who are not trained and understand the law and the legal profession. It's one thing if you see a bunch of people robbing the corner store, like legit, like robbing the corner store, right? Mm-hmm. But for someone who you perceive as being suspicious,
right? So whether they really
this is not you're not going to pull me over and ask me for my ID. Like, no, you're not the deputy, you're not a police officer. Like, no. And that's the problem, because people will have these biases and look, like, Ahmaud Arbery, you don't belong in this neighborhood.
You're jogging, right?
You're jogging.
And what's interesting is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he wasn't a current, but I think he wasn't an ex-cop, but he did like investigations for maybe the prosecutor's office. He had some
like
sort
private
of
eye, private
like a PI or something,
yeah,
right?
But
so he probably thought, "Oh, that's enough for me. I know what I'm talking about." And it's like, no, you really went out of your way to literally chase someone down, running, and But I know people say whatever they want to say about Sean King, but he's the one that leaked it. Someone gave it to him, and he leaked it. If they had never leaked it, they were covering that up. And that's
absolutely
what the civil judgment is about. They didn't want it to come out that's how he was killed. So, again, thank God for social media. Thank God for cell phones. I mean, like I said, this stuff has been happening, from Emmett Till, probably even before Emmett Till. Emmett Till was
way before Emmett Till. Emmett Till
that was probably the first time.
That was the first. Emmett Till was the first big story.
It's almost like the first version of old version of social media. Like somebody put it really out there for the whole public to see, and
correct.
People were just upset and distraught. And it's like, here we are, whatever, 40, 50 years later. And our Black men, especially are, being killed, and there's just no justice. And then we even have our Black women. So that's what I wanted to close out with Breonna Taylor. I know, it's like justice for Breonna Taylor, justice for Breonna Taylor. And then the irony is, the latest in her case, which I always say it's not really her case, because the officers are being convicted of endangering her neighbors. Yeah. So just walk me through, how can you charge someone with endangering her neighbor? So if you're endangering her neighbors, aren't you by default also endangering her? So even if they didn't give him a murder charge, could she at least get an endangerment charge? I don't understand how is she being left out if her neighbors are being included? Just like as a prosecutor, I don't know how.
This one is a really tough one for me, because on its face value, I'm like, that was reckless, in my opinion. Whatever the information they have for the warrants
they had received,
that was clearly inaccurate, and here it is, you have law-abiding citizens who believe that someone is legitimately breaking into your home, and you have a right to defend your home if someone is coming inside.
Yeah. Especially if you don't know. And of course, they say you can get announced yourselves on several witnesses.
Right. The no-knock warrants and all of that stuff. But here's the problem, though. I feel like there's a lot more information prior to coming into it, which I think needs to be explored. And I don't think they've done that.
And we haven't. Okay. So you're saying maybe that's fine.
And look, I do think there needs to be justice more so than just the endangering. But what that is, it's hard for me to comment on it, because I still feel like there's so much information left out. We have legitimately seen the footage of George Floyd. We have legitimately seen the footage of Ahmaud Arbery. Right. But right now, we're going off of a narrative of what happened.
And were there cameras on for Breonna Taylor? That's something I don't see.
That's the thing.
See, I don't know.
They haven't had any of that.
Any discussions about that? Okay.
And again, as I'm saying, I do think what happened to her was reckless. It shouldn't have happened. There needs to be justice for her. But it's hard for me to sit here and say what that justice looks like, because all we're being told is a narrative they said they did an investigation. They clearly didn't release all the information in that investigation, or they did a halfway. They may have even done a halfway investigation on that, which I have a problem with in itself.
Right.
Because if I remember correctly, I felt like there was some, interviews with grand jury members afterwards, and they felt like, no, that's not how I went. That's not what I said. So there was a lot of other things going on that I really did not like. But the problem is, we don't have the same information that we have for the other cases that we were talking about. And so I just don't know what the ultimate, to me, what the ultimate penalty looks like, as far as what her justice truly requires. But there needs to be a real, let's put it like that, I feel like there needs to be a real investigation.
Well, let's put it this way. I don't know when anything's going to happen, even with the current charges. They say, oh, because of COVID, we're delaying it. Sir, we had the whole Derek Chauvin. Like, Georgia can figure out Louisiana, wherever she does,
I think it was Louisville, Kentucky, wasn't it?
Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky.
I'm pretty sure can figure out how it had to trial. Because I think they were originally, because I know Amaz, they went ahead and scheduled it for October. So, Georgia, like I said, figured out how to schedule a date. So yeah, they need to also just figure that out. Like COVID is, lifting a little bit, restrictions are lifting. Like, I think that's a poor excuse. I think it's because they're also fighting to maybe get the charges amended, have the prosecutor go back. Of course, Daniel J. Cameron, whatever his name is, still in office, and as long as he's there, I just don't see him changing.
Unfortunately, I don't see it either. I mean, he's already showed his cards with regards to how he viewed this case and how he wanted to handle it. So it's just like,
he just feels like he did, again, like you said, based on the information he was provided, he felt like he came with, he's like, I took the emotion out of this. I was like, it was fair based on what I received. But like you said, this is information you're receiving, because maybe if you're not looking at all the information, maybe you would come to
exactly.
So we're going to close out with our Black Excellence Moment of the Week. Speaking of Breonna Taylor, one of her biggest advocates is Tamika Mallory. And she was actually, it's kind of how like Sean King kind of put Ahmaud Arbery on Front Street. Tamika Mallory and her foundation, Until Freedom, actually, they were the ones that really pushed. That was the main case that they focused on, and they're still focusing on. And Jay-Z is actually helping to finance some of the things with Until Freedom, some of the works that they're working on. So our Black Excellence Moment goes to Jay-Z and helping Tamika Mallory. I think a lot of times, again, kind of going back to what you're saying, how maybe this Generation Z or even the other generation afterwards, like what is enticing is being a rapper, being a singer, doing something on social media. Like that is what, so I love to see when you have these high profile entertainers really, put their money where their mouth is and really becoming more advocates, with their platform, which again, they don't have to do. But I feel like Jay-Z and Beyonce both have, when things have happened, with COVID, she did her whole Be Good thing and, fed people, and didn't do it for the clout. Like she did it because she wanted to help people, when there was the hurricanes, like that's one couple that does it. So that is our Black Excellent Moment for the week. I truly enjoyed this conversation. Like I said, I think I learned, like, I'm like, dang, I feel like and every time I talk to you, I learn something new about you, because I'm like, I didn't know this stuff before. So I'm sure our viewers there's so many jewels in what you said in this interview today. So I'm sure people will pull from that. If you want to follow Justin, are you Justin No, are you just Justin Reese on, or the Justin Reese?
Justin Reese on all social media platforms.
Justin Reese, really easy.
Justin Reese, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse.
He's the Justin Reese. You don't have to worry about figuring out where he is. Please follow him. Obviously, follow Black Lawyers Observe, which is the creator of this Black Lawyers podcast. We highlight Black news on a weekly basis. And then obviously we're funneling it into this podcast with the various Black lawyers and advocates and politicians that will be interviewed in each episode. So thank you again for joining us in this episode. We look forward to having you listen to our next episode. And with that said, take care. And, we're rooting for everyone Black as usual. That's our tagline. So yeah, thank you, Saray. All right, cool. All right, so that's it. Obviously I got to edit it down, but yeah, no, that was great. That was awesome. Great.
I love doing this, so I appreciate you having me as always.
Yeah, and I also just think the more content we can even putting faces to Black lawyers, kind of going back to your point about like, how do you kind of increase the profession? Like seeing, you know, like that's what it's like. I mean, I know the show is over, but I like seeing you on the TV. And I'm like, oh, that's a Black lawyer on TV. And like I said, I don't know what they're doing with the show. You know, like I said, they got it. I've done everything I was supposed to do. I did, like you said, I did the presentation, took forever to do the presentation. COVID hit, whole year we lost. You know, I couldn't control that. We did the presentation. I said I was going to give them to June 5th to tell me what was going on, because that's 2 months from when we recorded. And so, yeah, we'll see. But I just feel like, you know, they do highlight some of the other professions on Bravo and some of the other major networks. There are no real shows really showing like, you know, young, you know, attractive, energetic people in the legal field, whether they be Black or white. You don't really see it other than in like scripted shows like Law and Order or something like that.
Right.
You don't see it like in the real, almost like a Married to Medicine, like a real setting. Like
but remember, Married to Medicine is not about doctors and their profession though. It's that's what just brings them all together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, because again, I mean, it's funny because they did try to do a show where it was really about the law and the clients, and they didn't do as well. It was with Mona Scott Young on BCV. And the clients were actually pretty interesting. A lot of it was like criminal law. So it was to me, it was kind of interesting. But the attorneys themselves, like you said, like there just wasn't enough. They weren't interesting enough for it to kind of continue
I feel like if you were to do a show about like actual like law, criminal might be
probably the only way you could do it.
The only one, because the problem,
you could figure like feature different cases each week or something like that or something.
Yeah, because the problem is, as you know, our legal process moves real slow. You know, we as real individuals in the real world, we operate on, you know, minutes, hours, and days, where in the legal profession we operate on weeks, months, and years. And in the production world, you just don't have that kind of time.
Right. They got to just pull whatever you've done in those weeks. So
exactly. It's tough.
It should be interesting. And again, I mean, like you said, the backdrop is what it's going to be what brings together. They're going to try to pull as much as they can, but it's really going to be the relationships within the cast, outside of the cast. That's where the primary will be. So like I said, we'll see. Like that's kind of hanging. Like I'm doing the podcast. I'm thinking about closing my practice because I'm actually done being an entrepreneur. I really want to actually go back. It's funny when you talk about your professor. I kind of wanted to go into academia full time and just have a salary and call it a day. These clients are driving me crazy. So that's where I'm kind of.
Mine are driving me nuts right now.
For me, I'm like, I've done it. I've experienced it. I've had some success in it. But yeah, I am kind of looking at my life. Like, what does my life look like for the next 5-10 years? Like, you know, I still want to very much be in the law, but how can I do it in different ways? So whether it be the podcast or the show or doing correspondent work, I'm just looking on how can I transition, keep it, but like just do it in a different way without necessarily having to have like, you know, all these clients and stuff. So we'll see. Like I said, I think I'm on my way in doing it. I just, you know, I'm just waiting for some decisions to be made.
For sure. So,
but anyway, all right. Thank you so much again. We'll keep in touch. And like I said, you know, once everything's edited and uploaded or whatever, you'll have the link. And thank you again for being on. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thanks so much, G.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon. All right. Bye. Bye-bye.